On the seventh night of a sulky moon, Hermes heard a yawn that shook olives off a hillside tree. He'd been racing the wind, his wind sandals flicking the cool dark, when the yawn rolled up from a valley hemmed by blue mountains. Long and slow, the sort of yawn you could sit on. Hermes tipped into a glide, curiosity tugging harder than speed, and dropped toward the thyme-scented fields. At the valley's middle lay a giant, truly a giant, not a rumor or a cliff in disguise. He rested on his side, with one boulder hand under his head, the other draped across wildflowers. His beard cradled a sleeping cat. A flock of sheep nested in the crook of his elbow. A little village curved against his knee, its windows dark as pebbles. Everything slept, but the giant. Hermes landed on the giant's shoulder and pinged a pebble to announce himself. That yawn nearly blew me back to Athens. The giant rolled his eye, a small lake bright with stars. Oh, he rumbled, voice like a door opening in a hillside. A small god? Which one are you? Small is relative, Hermes said, pretending to tip a hat. Hermes, messenger, mischief, traveler between here and there. And you are the reason the night keeps wobbling like a table with one short leg. My name is Mallow, the giant said. I can't sleep, not for 6 nights. I'm tired, but the more I try, the more awake I am. The world refuses to hush. Hermes listened. The night was busy, moth wings tapping stone, dew applauding grass, a brook telling the same joke to whoever would hear it, roots whispering like neighbors. For a giant, every whisper was a choir. Everything talks, Mallow said, embarrassed. Every pebble, every reed. I'm full of nests. My thoughts crowd each other. Sleep is shy. Helping mortals wake was easy. Hermes was good at knocking on doors at the wrong time and inventing games that lasted until dawn. Helping someone sleep, that was an interesting puzzle. What have you tried? Counting sheep, Mallow said, glancing at his elbow flock. Hermes grinned. You're cradling the problem. Nightingales tried a lullaby. The shepherd whistled. A child sang about boats. But songs led to rivers, and rivers led to stones, and stones had a verse of their own. Your thoughts keep traveling in circles, Hermes said. We'll give them a better road. He tapped his chin. If I were sleep, I'd bring 3 things. A warm story, a handful of sky, and a lullaby from someone who never sings. Mallow blinked hopeful. Can you fetch those? Of course, Hermes said, mischief unfurling like a bright ribbon. Wait here. The giant snorted. Waiting was his one guaranteed skill. Hermes leapt and skimmed the treetops to the village curled at Mallow's knee. Streets breathed flour and last laughter. A baker's rolls cooled on a windowsill. Hermes liberated one as a listening fee. Stories drowse in ordinary places. Doorways, shoes, a pitcher of milk catching moonlight. Hermes plucked them gently, a girl's tale of a lantern that learned to float and startled its own flame. A fisherman's memory of a wave shaped like a hand that never quite closed. An old woman's bread that rose too high and kissed the ceiling, leaving a pale print. He folded each into his cloak, stitching them with honesty. Stories don't like being lied about when you plan to sleep beside them. On the edge of town, a fox in a night-sliced coat watched him with polite amusement. Collecting? The fox asked. Hermes said, paying fairly, gossip, or luck you can hide. Luck gets tangled in my tail, But gossip, up the lane, in the willow carved with initials, a bee fell in love with the moon. The tree remembers. Hermes climbed the willow and pressed his ear to its whisper. The story hummed there, a bee buzzing itself into longing, the moon patient and whole. He cupped the tail and tucked it away, leaving the fox the baker's role. Foxes had their own manners. Not saying thank you was one of them. Stories rustled in his cloak. One piece found. Now for a handful of sky. He rose swift and thin into cold hush. Constellations grazed the dark. The river of milk, queenly temper made beautiful, drew a pale road he might have walked. Hermes unbuckled one winged sandal and wielded it like a net, catching star motes that laughed themselves loose when mortals nearly noticed them. Stardust is patient. It will wait all night in your hair. The moon slid near, cream-colored and curious. "What are you doing?" she asked, frown only half serious. "Borrowing," Hermes said. "A giant needs sleep. Last time you borrowed, the dew sang for a week. Owls couldn't hear themselves think." "It was a good song," Hermes said. The moon allowed a sliver smile. He filled the sandal until it looked like a nebula in the shape of a shoe. For good measure, he plucked a single bright thread from the spilled milk river and tucked it into his cloak. If Hera asks later, he'll put it back. Mostly. Now for the last thing, a lullaby from someone who never sings. Many things hum if you listen right, but the mountain guarding the valley to the north, a stern back of ribs with a stubborn cap of snow, had a voice for thunder arguments, not songs. Hermes landed on his shoulder, where the grass is brave. "Evening," said the mountain, granite polite. "You again. I need a favor. Quiet, not loud. A lullaby." "I do not sing," the mountain said. "Not out loud," Hermes agreed. "But you hum when you hold snow. You murmur when rain travels through you. You whisper when the sun warms your skin. You know what a lullaby feels like. You've just never sent it out." "For whom?" the mountain asked. "A giant named Mallow. He hasn't slept. I think your voice is the one he hasn't thought to hear." The mountain thought in strata and seams. A fox curled nearby to listen. Far below, a stream tried a new note and giggled. "What is a lullaby?" the mountain asked at last. "A promise that nothing needs to happen for a while. A way to hold someone without hands." Silence, which was agreement. Hermes drew the milky thread from his cloak, stretched it between his hands, and closed his eyes. He listened to interior mountain sounds, powdered rock settling, old ice shifting, grasses holding each other upright in wind. He braided those into the thread and sang, soft, a rope-warm voice, no ornament, just the shape of falling and the rounds of breath. The mountain tried. The first hum was a wagon wheel in need of grease. The second was smoother. The third slid down the world's spine and came to rest beside the lake like a bolt, finding its slip. "That will do," Hermes said. "Keep it ready." "Hurry," said the mountain. "Singing is like rain. Once it gathers, it prefers to fall." Dawn put one pale toe on the horizon. Hermes shot downward, cloak full, sandal glittering. Mallow had not moved. A shepherd had tucked a blanket over his wrist, the kind of courtesy both enormous and small. Hermes landed on the broad field of the giant's chest. He had all. He said. "Do I eat it?" Mallow asked, eyes drooping. "Not yet. First, we make your thoughts cozy." Hermes opened his cloak. Warm, particular stories rose like steam and arranged themselves in the air like little lanterns. The floating lantern glowed. The hand-shaped wave beckoned. The ceiling kiss bread hovered, shy and proud. The bee and the moon hummed through willow breath. Boots wanted to brag about the bricks they'd walked. A window had mistaken rain for visitors. A kettle cried only on Tuesdays. "Pick a flavor," Hermes said. "Sweet, quiet, a little funny, a little sad." "A little sad," Mallow murmured. "Sadness is heavy. It might keep me from floating away." Hermes nodded and lifted the bee and moon story by its soft corners. "Once," he said, "a bee fell in love with the moon." He told it simply, the bee never quite satisfied with honey because honey kept the world too close. The moon, far and whole, wanting nothing. The bee flew up until its wings turned to ideas. The moon admired persistence the way mountains admire rivers. The bee learned that light can touch without pressing, that closeness sometimes means leaving room to breathe. On hidden moon nights, the bee carried a pearl home and lit the garden by not trying too hard. Mallow's breath lengthened, a gentle sea. Hermes waited. Then he lifted the star-filled sandal and shook it gently. Stardust fell like polite rain. It settled in Mallow's hair and along the bridges of his nose, tucked itself into eyelashes as if they were shells. It pulled in the hollow above his cheekbone and turned it into a small private sky. "The last thing," Mallow whispered, almost asleep. "The lullaby," Hermes said. He cupped Mallow's ear and made a shepherd's quiet call. "Above the mountain, let go." The hum slid down the ridges like fog with a purpose. It learned the valley shape with its mouth closed and then opened and sang. It didn't ask the night to change. It praised the weight of bodies that let the earth remember where we are. It praised root patience and river logic. It promised that thoughts needing attention would still be there after sleep, gentled by the dark. It unknotted the day's tight places. It offered sadness a chair by the door. It praised breath and the spaces between breaths where a whole country can rest if folded neatly. Mallow slept. It happened subtly, then all at once. The lake eye closed without argument. His chest rose and fell like the slowest tide. Fingers curled and uncurled like a leaf in breeze. A smile floated up and docked at his mouth. Hermes stood on the quieting chest and looked over the valley. Birds tucked beaks beneath wings. The village shifted into a deeper hush. Dawn, charmed, waited a little longer. Task finished, Hermes could have left, but mischief likes to linger when it's learned tenderness. He sat cross-legged and unwound more stories, telling them in a feather-light voice so they could drift into the giant's dreams. He told how the floating lantern grew braver, reflected in the lake, and learned that bravery is the art of staying. He told of the wave that had been waving all its life without anyone waving back until a turtle raised a head. The ocean, delighted, practiced hellos with gulls all afternoon. He told of bread that rose too high and kissed the ceiling. The ceiling, never before kissed, blushed and stopped shedding dust for a week. The baker tied a ribbon to the spot to remember that sometimes too much is exactly right. Boots and bricks remembered each other. The window made room for raindrops to sit and talk. The kettle's Tuesday tears watered basil that grew in the shape of laughter. Stories bred softly in the air, tethered to stardust so they wouldn't wander before the giants could dream them. The mountain hummed without confession. Even the moon slid through a gap in the clouds to listen, smiling sideways. When the sun finally padded up like a lion prepared to purr, the lullaby retreated, not empty, but wise enough to step aside. The valley breathed with the rhythm of a place that had a sleeping giant at its heart, longer, slower, promising. Hermes brushed stardust from his knees and checked the cat in Mallow's beard. One eye opened. "Keep watch," Hermes said. The cat closed the eye again, the feline method of keeping watch by modeling perfect rest. Hermes wrote a note on a sliver of bark with a thorn. "When you wake, remember, you are allowed to be quiet inside." He tucked it beside Mallow's ear where a breeze would press it into place. He took a souvenir, a curve of contentment from the giant's breath to stem later on a sleepless messenger. In exchange, he left a joke about a spoon lost in a teacup and not wanting to be found. A child would discover it at noon and feel lighter for no clear reason. Mischief likes economies that leave the world richer. The mountain spoke, quiet for a mountain. "Thank you." "For what?" Hermes asked. "For listening long enough for me to hear." Hermes, surprised into humility, nodded and rose. He didn't go straight to Olympus. He followed a shy road that wanted to show him a field of poppies it had raised in secret, lost on purpose to make the wind brag for the sailors, and delivered two messages that had waited for courage. By the time he returned, the day was 3 cups of tea old. Children paraded along the curve of Mallow's shin. Shepherds argued amiably when nothing urgent was eating their sheep. The cat had migrated to Mallow's shoulder, a sun puddle with whiskers. The giant slept through the day, into the next night, and a little way into morning, which is acceptable payment after 6 sleepless nights. The mountain's hum faded from the air, but remained braided into hedges, ready to rise on clear evenings for no meteorological reason. Stardust melted into wheat. Anyone who ate bread that week found themselves kinder by a thumb's width. The stories drifted down like thistledown. Lodging in hair, people told them to each other without knowing where they'd begun. That is one way to define a good story. When Mallow finally woke, he kept his eyes closed a moment to taste the last sweetness of sleep. The valley's old clamor had been replaced by generous quiet. No knife edges, just room. He opened his eyes to a friendly sky. The sliver of bark lay by his ear. He read the message slowly, allowed to be quiet inside. Permission, never requested, never offered, arrived like a key that fit. He sat up carefully. The village squeaked the way villages do when mountains move. The cat hopped to a rock, inscrutable. "How's your head?" Hermes asked from an olive's shade, chewing another honey roll he had definitely purchased with charm rather than coin. "Lighter," Mallow said, "and heavier in a better way. It fits. That's the trick." Mallow cupped the air where his thoughts had once flown in panic. They settled in his palm like a flock learning a new pattern, not forgetting the old, just trying another because they trusted the sky. "Will I always need stories and stardust and a mountain?" "You'll need what you need. Some nights only your breath, some nights the bee and the moon, some nights the wind's report from over the ridge. Ask the mountain kindly and it will hum. Ask rudely and it will pretend not to hear, which is the same lesson it gives thunder." Mallow placed a gentle hand on the ground. The cat bumped it with a head, then licked an oath as cats swear them. He lay down again, not because he must, but because it pleased him to rest on purpose. He glanced at Hermes. "You helped me. What do you want in return? A cloud? A pear tree? The river's rumor for those who wear winged shoes?" Hermes considered the village child balancing on a low wall, the mountain that had learned to sing, the giant with an open hand like a field where gratitude could grow. He said to Mallow, "Tell me a story." Mallow smiled, a smile that tasted of soup waiting on a tidy table. He said, "Once, a little god came to a valley on a night when sleep had lost its way. He reminded the valley to sing, the mountain to hum, and the giant to be quiet inside. He didn't do it for admiration, though he admires himself a little." "Accurate," Hermes said. "But because curiosity dressed as kindness, and kindness walked in and made curiosity forget its own name. The giant slept, and when he woke, he carried a pocket of night where things could rest like stones in a river, polished by passing water, unmoved. The god returned sometimes with a joke or a note tied to a bee. The valley learned mischief can be tender, silence can sing, and even the very large can be held lightly." "Did the god steal another honey roll on the way out?" Hermes asked. "The baker had made an extra. That is how the world compensates for you." Mallow laughed, a sound that made fig trees consider a bonus fruit. He rose into the bright blue. "Sleep well when you do, and when you can't, call. I may be busy teaching a door to tell jokes or carrying an I am sorry across a city, but I'll come. I have another sandal. The mountain owes me a hum." Mallow nodded, already drifting toward the pleasant country of naps. Hermes scratched the sky and vanished, a quick margin note in light. The valley folded the new quiet into its pockets. The mountain kept a song like a friend keeps an apple to share. The cat dreamed of a bowl that refilled itself. The baker kneaded dough to the memory of a hum that made the flower sigh. On following nights, the moon looked down at the steady rise and fall of the giant's chest and smiled instead of frowning. Sometimes, when Hermes passed overhead and shook his winged sandal just a little, a single grain of patient star fell onto Mallow's brow like a blessing. "Just in case," he'd say.
And the giant would sleep, the village would hush, the mountain would keep a tune in its deep pocket, and the night, just for those hours, would be a room where even gods remembered how to rest their wings.